Welcome to the Real Estate Show. From buying to selling and everything in between. Rochester's home for everything real estate. And now, your hosts from the Anthony Butera team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. It's Anthony Butera and Jason Mancuso.
Everybody, welcome to, I think this is episode 83 of the Real Estate Show. First quarantine episode. Look at this.
Yeah, the last episode.
This is it. I love that there's a screen behind Anthony. I'm just worried about what's going to pop up on it.
Oh, no, I'm done casting my Pornhub feed.
Okay. Say this could go viral.
I got one too. We're all live and plugged in. So nothing going on out there, right?
Yeah.
Normal operating procedure.
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable. So, I mean,
Scott.
we filmed the last episode on Thursday, which would have been the 19th. And then on March 20th, Friday, Governor Cuomo enacted this,
Executive
statewide executive order, mandate, ban of essentially non-essential business being conducted outside of the home and, not a travel ban, but just everybody stay the F home, right? Let's call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, we're all for it. I mean, I think it's very important. We've obviously got a massive situation, crisis going on out there with COVID, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. So I'm all for cutting the head off the snake, and I think for humanity's sake, beating this thing, and this is really the only way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, from a real estate standpoint, for the purpose of the real estate show, things are now different until this executive order is lifted. And, that's what we're adapting to. And so far, so good, but obviously it's, things are different.
So I think the, biggest things for us to get out there, right? Because the consumers don't understand what we're held to and what the state's made essential. And we're not deemed essential, but we're also not handcuffed to stop conducting business. But most of our activities have been handcuffed. So we can put homes up on the market. Real estate agents cannot do any real estate activities physically outside of their home. So to put things into perspective, place us in a jail cell and we have to sell houses. So what do? We there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of creativity. And it's funny when something like this happens, you can kind of see what the future is going to look like because everybody starts freaking out pretty quickly, being confined to their homes. So we've been doing virtual tours, gray areas with home inspections. There's home inspectors that say that they're exempt. There's home inspectors that say they're absolutely not exempt. There's some photographers that are saying they're exempt, and ultimately, the sellers and the buyers have to be okay with it too. Like, we can't put people in harm's way, and we definitely can't script sellers into why they need to put their house in the market right now, because I don't think that a lot of sellers that are on the fence are going to put their house in the market right now. I have plenty that are going to wait till this thing comes to an end or they open up the floodgates, but we have legitimate sellers that have to sell. Their job's being relocated. They can't afford to, they already bought, they can't afford to carry 2 mortgages for a long period of time. So the wants and haves are separating our business right now.
Well, that's just it. I mean, there's, before we dive into it more, I mean, important to know that, the real estate industry as a whole falls under the financial sector of essential businesses. So what I mean by that, to clarify, is banks are still funding loans. Attorneys are still finding ways to close transactions for buyers and sellers. The push is that whenever possible, per the governor, and rightfully so, don't leave your house, conduct business virtually. And that's what all these vendors and everybody in our industry has to adapt to for the time being. So it's not a shutdown. And if you're in process with a transaction right now, I'm sure you're already aware, but you're able to get to the closing table. And if you have a need to do something, again, whether it's you're relocating, whether it's you bought a house before all this started and you need to sell your existing house, you're still able to do so. We just need to, for the greater good, we need to do this virtually. And it's very much possible. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, we're not expecting to have 100% of the market out there willing to buy a house virtually, but it is possible to do things here. So, just to be clear that we're not under a total shutdown. We're just under restrictions.
I think the biggest frustration right now for, real estate agents and consumers is, I think everybody would be okay with drastic measures, but not knowing the timeline is where the frustration lies. Like, listen, if the rule was no one leaves their house for 4 weeks and then it's back to business as usual, I think that's palatable. I think people can digest that and be okay with it. But the unknown, like, are we sitting here doing a podcast in this fashion 90 days from now? If that's the case, people have to sell their homes. If we knew that in 3 weeks or 30 days that we're going to be able to conduct business as usual, I would probably strongly advise sellers to wait, right? This can't be self-serving thoughts. If your initial thoughts are you and your wallet, then they're not the right thoughts. But we have some legitimate people that are, they're in financial pain.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, for sure. And first of all, I do want to continue this way to do the podcast moving forward because I'm not wearing any pants.
It's the way to do it. Yeah.
Second of
we
all,
can tell.
Right.
You were looser, you're more calm.
Yeah, I'm more.
Yeah.
Exactly. Second of all, like, what you just said, really applies to the world right now, at least in New York State and many other states. And I mean, I heard India shut down as a country, and it's like 1.3 billion people or something like that. So, everybody's in a tough spot right now. I mean, economically, there were 3-point-something million unemployment claims that came out this morning for the past week. It's astronomical, number for that to happen. And I mean, we're in massive, global economic, humanitarian issues right now. So, when we talk about this, a lot of this can be lateral to other industries as well, and not just selfishly to our real estate industry. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge thing, is like, all right, when's this going to end? Is this a week-long thing? Is this 30-day thing? Is this going to go 6 weeks, 6 months? What? Nobody really knows right now. I think anybody that's throwing out numbers as far as how long it's going to last, I don't think they have any data or facts to support it. So it's a guessing game. So with that said, there's definitely, the frustrations, and again, back to the people in the real estate, the consumer side of it, who are needing to buy or sell a home. That's kind of what we're finding out so far. I'm like, the first week into this is like, all right, the people that have to do something and there's a sense of urgency, that's surfacing, and we'll adapt to it. At the end of the day, we're very much like adhering to, this executive order to, let's beat this crisis, and, we got to stay home wherever possible.
I can't believe India took that stance. I mean, if no one's out defecating the streets, what are the dogs eating?
Oh my God. You know, we have a big audience in
Yeah.
India, and you
I
just
know.
you just
There goes
ruined it.
that demographic.
Yeah. So now with people, so some people, you said 3 million claimed for unemployment. If somebody that their long-term plans, let's say by the end of the summer, this is all over, completely 100% all over, we're back to business as usual. But somebody had to go on unemployment for a couple of months, they're in the restaurant industry or something. How does that affect them mortgage wise?
Great question. Great question. So, Jason and I we were talking earlier today about that. Like we're going through our pipeline of deals that are pending right now that are waiting to close and trying to figure out which deals are the most vulnerable, right? And if they're not employed, what does that look like? Are they truly unemployed, collecting unemployment, or are they temporary leave? How's the banking industry going to look at that? I can tell you that there's nothing right now that's excusing this temporary situation. So I think we're going to see more problems. This is really just the surface of it, right? Because if we put something under contract today, it's not closing for another 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months in some cases. So a lot's going to change. So just trying to take the proactive approach as opposed to the reactive approach. And the way that we're accepting offers, fair housing rules, we have to be careful about what we're asking about the buyers, right? So without necessarily asking exactly what they do and exactly who they work for, we want to try and vet these because their buyer's agent may not know enough to ask these questions like, hey, listen, this pre-qual letter from 2 weeks ago is great, but what is your job outlook moving forward? Because I'd hate to get to the week of closing because the final condition of a mortgage is the lender right before the closing doing what's called a VOE, verification of employment. So we're going to see issues.
Yeah, and we're in call it week 1 or week 2 overall of this, like really starting to hit home for the country, for the state. And right now, like we're fortunate as a team, as a business, where we haven't had a lot of fallout, but that we're optimistic, but cautiously optimistic because by no means do we expect that to be the case next week and the weeks after. But what we can do is work with each party to a transaction to try to figure out what the creative options are and game plan from there. I mean, again, just massive economic fallout happening out there. And what nobody knows, again, back to how long is this going to last? Do businesses just that have laid people off, do they take them right back when the doors open, so to speak, again? Or is there more of a bigger issue at hand to where this is going to be a long-term, economic potential recession type of thing? We don't know. What I can tell you real estate-wise is, the expectation is that the market has now forever changed from what it was the last 4 or 5 years. I guess for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to be having a lot different conversations moving forward than what we've been beaten to death with since we started doing this show with this extreme seller's market and that condition. Things are going to be changing in the local and national real estate market, and we'll adapt to it. Our hope is for the greater good that this doesn't end up being a long-term economic, negative situation to where, the housing market selfishly dries up as well. So we can we're very much making the push to be community oriented as much as possible. We want people to think of that, we've now helped thousands of people buy or sell a home, and we have that network. We have our network of vendors. We have just networks individually as a team where we're dealing with a web of thousands and thousands of people that we can put to work if anybody has a situation on their end that they need help with. I'm not talking about real estate. I'm just talking about life at this point. So, our duty to the community is now more than ever, because this community has served us, and we want to get through these times together, and the housing market's kind of secondary to what we're going through right now. What it's going to look like in a month, 2 months, 3 months, there's a lot of questions out there. That was a little bit of a rant, but I mean, back on real estate.
Another thing too, Mark, the state mandate has laid out that we can no longer cold call anybody. So basically, we can't reach out to anybody and talk real estate unless they've made an inquiry to themselves, right? So we can't make any unsolicited phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And that's changed. I mean, a lot of agents, that's 100% of their business is prospecting and cold calling. And it's just, I mean, those agents, they really pulled the plug on them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're more fortunate because that's not really too much of our business, if any at all, because we're more relationship based, and we're still able to check in with the people that we know to see how they're doing. And then, that's kind of always been our MO for conducting business. And then, if anybody contacts us directly for a real estate question or need, then obviously we can respond to them. But yeah, what Anthony's referring to is and this will, the consumer listening, this will probably be a breath of fresh air, but, there's a lot of agents out there that, have developed a certain segment of business around, kind of random calls to the consumer to see if there's anything that they can help with in the real estate field. And that's no longer allowed. What it is it's kind of the fine print to whenever there's a state of emergency enacted, that, cold calling and unsolicited phone calls or soliciting is not allowed. Under a state of emergency in New York. So there's a lot that's changing in our world as realtors. For the consumer, what you need to know is that, we're essentially operating in a way where, you are not allowed to enter somebody else's house is what the executive order from the governor for New York State essentially is summarized as, like, stay home. Buying a house is not deemed an essential business. Well, I shouldn't say that. Buying a house where you haven't gotten under contract yet and having the ability to go see the house in person, meaning somebody else's house, is not deemed essential. But you can still buy a house, you can still sell a house, it just has to be done virtually. And again, the transaction that you're in the middle of right now can still close, but we just can't, we can't facilitate other people going out in public, essentially.
And the challenge is, there's over 3,000 real estate agents in Rochester at our local board. And, you're always going to have those rogue agents that are going to conduct business based on gray area and workarounds. And, it does stink for the rest of us. You get an agent that is trying to do the right thing, because what a lot of people are forgetting is why we're doing this. Like, there's a serious disease that has no respect for anybody or any borders or anything. So when these agents are conducting business the same as usual, because there's gray area, like, these people, like, the governor's not going to say specifically real estate agents in Rochester, New York. It doesn't matter if you're an independent contractor. Like, they're not going to get that specific. They don't have the time to do so. The rule book is changing on the fly. This podcast, if you're listening to it in 2 days, we may take a completely different tune. We're waiting on information in real time.
Our world has shifted to, for sure, a day by day change, but oftentimes hour by hour, where things change multiple times per day. So we're rolling with the punches. We're equipped. I mean, you know, Anthony and I, for our business, I mean, we're very fortunate enough to where we have a staff on payroll of 4, and we have no plans to make any layoffs. And you know, we're keeping that staff busy with you know, there's a lot of work that we need to do that's being done, and they're working from home, obviously. So, you know, we feel very fortunate that we're not in a position where we, you know, have to make harsh financial decisions that affect others. So we're thankful for that. But you know, this is something that's affecting many people out there, and it sucks, but we'll get through it.
And, you know, not just real estate related, because, you know, what Jason's alluding to is we're taking care of a lot of loose ends that we just didn't have the time to get to before. So whether you're in real estate or whatever the case may be proactive about this time that you have. Be purposeful with the time. I mean, Lowe's and Home Depot are still open. So those projects that you were going to do in May, do them now, because when they open up the floodgates, you're going to regret everything you didn't do while you had an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, we're using this opportunity. We're redoing our kitchen. Obviously, the people that were coming to install the counters and install our dishwasher can't come now. It was like, I think
that who, Lily or them?
Says them. Well, they're not
really?
Essential. They were told they were non-essential. They're like a handyman.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, contractors are deemed essential, so I'm surprised.
I'll go yell at them.
Yeah, yell at them for sure. I have a project going on right now, and I was fearful of the same thing. Like, this is going to hold up my project, but it's actually made it easier because a lot of these contractors were doing work in areas that they can't do it, surrounded by too many people, nursing homes, assisted living facilities. So there's people that have freed up. I've got more help than I was able to get 2 weeks ago.
I'll go scold them, tell them to come to my kitchen. But we're using the opportunity to, you know, to
Were
do
they Indian,
part.
Mark? Were they Indian?
Yeah. Yes.
Gotcha. That makes sense. You know the Indians and their granite.
Mm-hmm. But you can use this opportunity to fix up stuff around your house if you're planning on selling in the future and whatnot, you know?
Yep.
Oh, did we lose Jason? Oh, there he is. All right.
Jason's in his basement.
I'm back.
Well, so, I mean, you guys have your Facebook going, and we have the Real Estate Show Facebook and, you know, AnthonyButerraTeam.com, and keep everybody updated and all that good stuff, right?
Got it.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Show. Find us on Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. If you're looking to sell or buy, talk to the Anthony Butera team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. Visit AnthonyButerraTeam.com.